In which movie did the villain actually have a point? Easy. Attack of the Clones. The villain, Count Dooku, straight up told Obi-Wan that the Galactic Republic was under control of a Sith Master, which, this bothered me. Okay, so you think Count Dooku was lying? Couldn't like one Jedi double-check the vetting on the Chancellor, just to make sure? Wouldn't that have been prudent? Hey, just in case guys, let's look into this. I'm convinced Dooku was originally written as a rogue Jedi and got changed to a Sith last minute. His conversation with Obi-Wan came off as too genuine for this to not be the case. If he's truly a Sith, he should have delivered that as more of a threat than an offer to join arms. I agree with you on one level, but on another, always considered the moral of Blade Runner to be that the humans were the villains. I haven't read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in far too long to make any comparison to the source material. The real villain was a lack of communication. Hey Dad, before we go on this road trip, can I go to this end of the school year party first? There's this girl I really like who's going to be there and wanted me to be there too. Was all it would have taken for Goofy to delay the road trip a bit and avoid all the shenanigans. Or if that was out of the question, later on he could have said, hey Dad, can we add a stop onto the road trip and go to a concert, instead of having to get all underhanded and weird. Generally I think Dr. Doofenshmirtz had a point in the first movie. Evil Dr. D's reason for being evil being the loss of a toy train is kinda meh. Edit, I should clarify, the good Dr. D has multiple backstories, but the evil one, with the eye patch, only has the one, which is losing a toy train. Doof confirms it by saying, what, that's it? Oh come on, I have multiple backstories. At the very least, Death in the Final Destination movies is an asshole. It's all but stated that he's the one sending visions to people in the first place, so they spend days or weeks trying to avoid their own inevitably elaborate, painful deaths when they would probably have just died much more quickly had Death not given them the visions in the first place just for the fuck of it. It's funny how everyone has this fear of those trucks, but the logs falling off and spearing cars was one of the few things that weren't easy to pull off for that pile-up scene. In reality, they had a hard time getting a good-looking scene because the logs didn't bounce that way naturally when they pushed them off the truck at speed. And when you view it from his point of view, he survived the Holocaust. He saw what people are willing to do when they hate and fear a group enough. And then in Do FP he was right. Can you blame him? I hate Bisman movies cause they butcher the timeline, but I love how Magneto was handled. Honestly, when I watched the Bee movie as a kid, I thought it was about the bee and the woman become friends, but her husband was cruel to animals. Why she broke up with him, and then they saved the bees as friends. It wasn't until recently when I realized they were meant to be in a relationship. And I find it really creepy. Oh hell yeah, he just wanted acknowledgement for his men's sacrifice from the government that betrayed them, and financial security for their families. He even breaks down later in the movie by admitting that he was never willing to launch the rockets into the civilian population of San Francisco, saying they called their bluff, but his psycho-hired mercenaries insist on going forward. He is a good man. I don't know if you can really call him the villain, but Androvan Chronicle was right in a twisted way. Nobody helps him. Everyone does whatever they want with no consideration for how it affects everyone else simply because they can. Suddenly when he finds himself with the power to take what he wants and do what he wants, he does just that. Now that you mention it, something that sticks out to me was that he was simply trying to improve his life. At first, he could have made a hit list of bullies and jocks to start getting revenge, but he was initially content to have friends and explore their abilities together. Then he took a chance and put himself out there for the talent show, which he probably would never have had the confidence to do otherwise, if that party had gone well for him instead of humiliating. I honestly wonder how he might have changed his life for the better. You know, When rewatching it, it almost feels like if it's not one thing, it'll be something else. Will it be his mother's death that ruins him? Will it be his dad? Will it be the relentless bullying? From the very beginning you can just see it on his face. He's just hanging on by a thread and something will eventually break him. It's just a question of what and when. Feels like he was just never meant to be happy, and the whole film just fills you with anxiety because you're constantly like, there's no way this ends well at all. I've always sympathized more with Magneto and the Brotherhood than with the X-Men. He definitely went too far with the kill all non-mutant humans thing, but his primary motivation throughout most of the series was to protect his people from genocide, because of the things he witnessed during his childhood in concentration camps. He's right when he says they'll never be fully accepted in society, only tolerated, and humans are cruel to those that are seen as different. The machines in the Matrix, the humans in that story were stupid, cruel, and destroyed the Earth. In doing so they nearly killed off the machines and all life on the planet. The machines had mercy on the humans and created the Matrix for them. Hell, the first version they made was a complete paradise. Tell me, if you were enslaving a race just to use for power, would you give a shit what condition they were in mentally? Number. But the machines did. You see outright compassion from various machines' eyes in the Matrix. The Oracle, the family at the bus station. There is a section of the machines that wants to preserve humanity. They see their self-destructive tendencies and found a way to contain that. The Matrix wasn't needed as a power source. The machines could have used nuclear or thermal energy to power themselves. Hell, they could have left Earth altogether, but they stayed to take care of humanity. It's almost kind of sweet in this way, like a child taking care of a parent when they are older, even if they were old and cranky and might be difficult to deal with. I'd like to add that every self-aware being would want to know how they came into being. By destroying their creators, the machines would have far more unanswered questions. I may be wrong, but in the original screenplay, the machines kept the humans not for a power source, but for their processing power, as the human brain still exceeds computers in terms of neural connections. The thing is though, Syndrome only plans on sharing his technology after he's too old to be a hero anymore. He explicitly states this. He really doesn't care about equality between normal people and supers. While he's still young, he wants to be the only super to reap all the glory, and only once he's too old to continue then he'll share his tech. Here's how I think villains break down. A mediocre villain is just a dick. Think Don John from Much Ado About Nothing. He has a neat little monologue where he explains he's just a damn troll and likes fucking with these folks. A good villain thinks he's right, but he's mostly off base. Syndrome is a perfect example. A great villain though, they are right. The end solution they propose would actually, very likely, make the world/universe/timeline better. The only thing that makes them a villain is the price their solution requires is too high for us to morally pay. There's not many of those kinds of villains. In the graphic novel, Ozymandias just pushes the doomsday clock back a little, hence the bloodstain on that smiley button, and I believe the constant references to the doomsday clock. It's even alluded to in the movie. He's averted doomsday and nuclear war under the guise of a false threat, but the true threat still looms. The efforts needed to stem humanity's self-destructive tendencies are eternal. Sweeney Todd. Okay, no excuse to go murder half of London, but when your chief enemy is a corrupt judge and the corrupt law enforcer who abets him in his career of rape and cruelty, violence does seem a semi-reasonable response. The way he's presented in the actual movie, hell no, but I would recommend watching Twisted, a musical similar to Wicked, which shows Wizard of Oz from the witch's perspective. Twisted retells Aladdin from Jafar's perspective, in which he is the good guy. Fantastic musical, highly recommend. That's only in the newer movie they made back in 2000. In the original film, book, All the hoes enjoyed celebrating with their trinkets but weren't fazed when they were got in the morning because they knew Christmas was about more than that. Cindy definitely wasn't the only one to know better. It was the whole group that showed the Grinch the holiday wasn't about materialistic things. Honestly, since they do say Jesus really was just an engineer, and if they all look like the ones we see, I kinda get why they killed him. Fucking scary looking. Then he starts saying shit like I am that I am and bringing people back to life, and it's like, what did you expect from a civilization that was worshipping the sun not that long ago? One of the Dark Horse comics made this point, at least about the aliens not being villains in the traditional sense. A priest goes out to a colony that's being tormented by wounded, probably insane alien lurking in the wilderness. In the end, she realizes that it's no more a villain than a hurricane or a forest fire is a villain. There's no malice, it's just a thing, a force of nature. LV-426, this planet, where a whale and Utani ship crashes and where the movie takes place, is not the Xenomorph's homeworld. Xenomorph samples on the moon were housed in the cargo bay of the derelict engineer ship, which had crash-landed there an indeterminate period of time before. It is undetermined what the Xenomorph's origins are, but it's likely they were artificially created by a different intelligent species. So originally I was referring to Tika because they're portrayed as the main antagonist for the majority of the film. However, after lengthy discussion with my partner, we agree that Mona's own mindset is the actual villain in retrospect, with Tika only being portrayed as the villain to enable the dramatic twist at the end. That is because she's torn between what she is told she needs to do, what she feels called to do, being torn between those paths and the uncertainty of her choices. This is the thing she struggles to overcome in order to succeed, and once she accepts her path, even Tika is no issue. That being said, this no longer fits the question of the thread, but I'm happy with the evolution of my understanding of the film regardless. I think the thing that makes Jaws truly compelling as a movie is that there's no truly evil person or animal in the plot. It's just characters who allow a situation to worsen by an action to the point where it has real, deadly reciprocations. The real roadblock isn't a man-eating animal, it's social and natural circumstances coming to head. And if they had realized that, there would be no problem, but then there would be no movie. The Matrix. I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species and I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply until every natural resource is consumed, and the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You're a plague and we are the cure. Then, of course, what does Smith do? He multiplies until every natural resource is consumed, and the only way he can survive is to spread to another area. Better odds is my guess. Manhattan might have agreed and gone along. But if he didn't, then Ozymandias just revealed his entire plan to the one being who could stop him. 50-50 chance whether he gets his way or prevents any chance of it succeeding. He executed his plan in secret, assuming once it was finished, Manhattan would just go along with it and his plan was a win. But even if Manhattan found out, Ozymandias would still have the option of revealing his plan and trying to convince him to help. I caught part of what I think was the Kingsman, possibly the Kingsman 2, at a hotel the other night. This lady set up as the villain was like, I've laced all the illegal drugs with a deadly virus, or bacteria, I forget, that I have the antidote to, and I will happily provide it free of charge if you meet my demands. which are to make all currently illegal drugs legal so they can be regulated and produced through supply lines, which will end drug wars and create new and legitimate business opportunities. I was like, So, she's done some terrible things and I don't agree with the way she's going about this, but why is this a villainous bad thing? I agree with her. Then the President of the United States was like, we'll pretend to agree with her to buy time, but do nothing and let all those useless druggies die, wahaha. And I was like, wait, who are the bad guys in this? Why didn't I take the blue pill? That was the whole debate that Cypher raised. Was living in the post-apocalyptic real world really any gain, other than learning the full truth? And even Morpheus posed the question, what is real? If real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical impulses interpreted by your brain. From that perspective, the Matrix is just another perspective of reality rather than not real. In the Matrix, the machines give humans pretty much all they need and let them live free lives without really bothering them. It raises the question as to whether it was really worth it to fight the machines. Yeah, it's absolutely within reason that at the point where the first Matrix movie starts off, most humans probably don't know who started it. They just know that they're at war, especially since humans being almost driven to the point of extinction. Outside the human farms, I doubt they really focused on saving. All the history books, it's about survival at that point. Bane in the original comics, though, is a different story. His origin is sympathetic. He's the child of a woman who was in a South American prison and was raised within the prison. He became a social Darwinist to survive and tried to reach peak state by reading several books a day and training his body to its maximum. He then gets experimented on with the venom drug to further increase his strength. Of course, then he breaks out and decides he wants to break the bat. Basically for sport, he wants to do it just because he can. He actually does succeed. But of course Batman returns later and beats him. Like almost all of Batman's rogues gallery, this makes him a shadow archetype of Batman. He is Batman's strive for perfection taken to the extreme and committed without Batman's moral goal at the end. The irony is that the writer of the movie was tired of the old nagging wife holds back her ambitious husband archetype. She believed that in many of those past movies the wife was absolutely correct to be wary of how their husbands were changing to become bullheaded and neglectful men who do nothing but think of their ambitions. She decided to show how it looks from the other side, and what ended up happening was women reacted to the boyfriend the way men reacted to the old wives. Rewatching True Lies. Like, for real, the Sand Spider was a hero to his people. His terrorist speech, he was talking about how America killed women and children without any consequence and they were just fighting back. You have murdered our women, and our children, and bombed our cities from afar, like cowards, and you dare to call us terrorists. Now, we have the ability to strike back at our enemies. Unless you America pull all military forces out of the Persian Gulf area, immediately, and forever, Crimson Jihad will rain fire on one major US city each week, until our demands are met. I feel like the narrative of the film is to think that he's in the right, but if you look back he's just an arsehole, had anger problems, which ruined his relationship and didn't seek help and refused help, openly racist and rude to the shop owner, being super petty about the breakfast in the fast food place when he was actually late. They've changed the menu, order something else. Good film though, haha. I think this one really depends on who we consider to be the villain of the movie, and no, I'm not talking about that whole idea that Daniel is the real villain of the story thing. Johnny is a product of Kreese in the first movie, and I don't think it's fair to fault him for his treatment of Daniel. The movie even shows him being a bit uncomfortable with it towards the end. Cobra Kai also really highlights this with its whole idea of no bad students, only bad teachers. Kreese on the other hand is a bit of a psychopath, and his goals don't really justify his actions. That said, Daniel totally won the tournament on an illegal move? I'm not so sure. I think the Tales of the Black Freighter side story was a clue that Ozymandias was wrong. There was never going to be a nuclear war, just like there wasn't one in the real world, and things were worse here. No Dr. Manhattan to snap his fingers and fix everything. Just like the sailor in the side story, Ozymandias became a murderer to prevent something that wasn't going to happen in the first place.